Trudeau's perceived soft approach to Sikh extremist groups in Canada, and he frankly didn't help the situation by going in heavy on the national dress pandering, with Indian outfit after Indian outfit that seemed a bit much. I mean, it's not like when Modi visits Ottawa, he turns up in full Canadian formal dress, by which I, of course, mean a gravy-stained Toronto Raptors jersey and Roots sweatpants.
Just a man, so wonderful. Thought this world could offer so much more. Well, I've been traveling.
He looked like a complete backup dancer for a cheap Bollywood movie.
This weary soul can carry on. Show me the way home.
Hello humans, welcome back to the Slackline Quote of the Day broadcast. You are here with the boss.
The boss is coming.
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you.
We are once again chatting quotes. Sorry you missed yesterday's episode. Today is February 28th, 2018, last day of February. Missed yesterday's episode due to some technical difficulties trying to post it, but here we go. Been doing a lot of reporting on the gun control and talking about the kids in Florida and the mass shooting and all that type of stuff. So thought we'd take a little deviation from that today and talk some Canadian politics. We are in Canada. And even though it's not as exciting sometimes, it does obviously affect us, and so we're gonna chat a little bit about that. Justin Trudeau was over in India on a trip, which apparently did not go fantastic. A few factors playing into that. Apparently Trudeau has a bit of a soft stance on extremism in India, which is something that you don't like to hear, and the big word around is kind of how ridiculous he made himself look by insisting on dressing in traditional Indian garb. A lot of people saying he looked like he was at a wedding or in a crappy Bollywood movie, and that the trip was kind of a weird sort of vacation where they planned all the vacation stuff in the first few days of the trip and then all the business stuff in the second part of the trip, and India, I guess, had asked them to reverse it, and the Prime Minister's office declined that. With that in mind, we will get to our quote today. And Jerry, who's bringing us our quote? Our quote is coming to you from Overkill Killer. Do you have a friend who is overdoing it when meeting new people? The Overkill Killer is for you. It will settle down your friends, subdue them into a state of relaxation, where they may be able to actually associate with people properly. That, again, is Overkill Killer. And they bring us our quote today, coming from Washington Post journalist Barkha Dutt, or Dutt. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, so I apologize. I'm gonna commit to Dutt. Barkha Dutt. Indian journalist, in a column in the Washington Post. Her quote says, "Suddenly, all that charisma and cuteness seem constructed, manufactured, and above all, not serious." That is her take on Justin Trudeau. As a former fan of his, she was not impressed by his visit to India. That seems to be a common theme with Justin Trudeau. I was a similar way. People seem to be enamored with him from afar. He's a good-looking guy. He talks decently in front of people, but then you see him in person. It's pretty easy to see how manufactured most of what he says is, and how his lack of experience really shines through pretty blatantly. It's tough, I was a Liberal voter. I voted for Trudeau kind of begrudgingly, actually. Honestly, the options for leader of Canada were not fantastic the last go around. Especially if you were somebody who was looking for something different than Harper, and looking for a little bit of progressive change. Trudeau spouted a lot of that, but it was pretty, if you listened to him for more than a few minutes, it was pretty easy to kind of roll your eyes and hear the script and not really take most of what he was getting at seriously. And a lot of people seem to agree that, when voting for the Liberals, it was kind of in spite of Trudeau. And at least where I'm from, Calgary, which is obviously a very conservative place. Most of the people that are Liberal there are, even the Liberal ones are relatively conservative compared to the rest of Canada. And that's, relatively liberal compared to, conservative parts of the U.S. and whatnot. With the name Trudeau and stuff attached, it was a pretty hard sell there, considering the way that his father kind of looked at the West and kind of isolated it. So yeah, I mean, you throw your vote at him in hope that the leaders around him, the people that are around him, will execute the plan that they're talking about. And a few things have come along, but for the most part, it's been pretty stagnant. The medical marijuana thing is the marijuana legalization seems to be happening, which was one of the major things that they campaigned on, so that's good. But that's a pretty populist thing. I mean, it will generate revenue within the country for sure. You take a $6 billion industry and make it taxable. That's obviously a big thing, but beyond that, it's been a lot of fluff and stifling, actually. They changed the tax code a bit, which I think was a decent change, but at the same time, they're stifling energy exports by stopping pipeline builds and stuff like that, which can go either way with people. But I'm an environmentalist as much as anybody. But we need oil for a lot of things, and we're gonna use it. And if the pipelines aren't built, they're moving it other ways, which are worse. So that's just a fact. Anyways, I actually had the chance to ask a question to Trudeau when he was on the campaign trail. A buddy of mine had tickets to this had tickets to this conference with him at the Petroleum Club in Calgary. So it was Belly of the Beast, and I thought it would be interesting to show up, and I did. And he had this big long scripted speech that was pretty catered to the crowd. And I went in there. This is a few months before the election. I went in there with with an open mind, willing and able to be convinced by Trudeau to have me vote for him. And to be frank, I came out of it not being convinced. And if I wasn't convinced, as probably one of the more liberal people you'd meet around there, nobody else in that room would have been convinced. And yeah, they had a question period, and I actually asked him a pointed question about, international trade and selling our oil overseas and that type of thing. And he kind of dodged around the question and sort of answered it in an okay way, but it took him probably 10 minutes to answer it with a bunch of other lines from his script and stuff like that that were thrown back in. And, you know, again, as somebody that was willing to be convinced, I was not. I ended up voting Liberal anyways because, you know, the NDP was, you know, Mulcair is kind of a madman, and I wasn't really on board with what he had going on. And the Conservatives, I mean, there are just things that I can't tolerate, you know, homophobia and anti-science and these types of things. And there are anti-science sides of liberalism as far as like anti-vaccination and anti-GMO and stuff like that is concerned, but those aren't getting into policy as much as you know, stifling scientists' findings and you know, barbaric cultural practices hotlines and those types of things. So yeah, you were kind of stuck at that point if you were a liberal person in Canada, and so we ended up with Trudeau, and this is what we get. You know, he's kind of a glorified rock star, and, you know, a little bit, I think, missing the point of what he's supposed to be doing. He's kind of seems to be treating it more as like an ambassador or a figurehead sort of position when, I mean, you gotta do stuff, man. You gotta do work. And it seems like this trip to India exemplified, you know, his view on things as, you know, a lot of sources say that he was tried to convince to flip his schedule so that he went there and did business first and then kind of the vacation and tourist thing second. But apparently the Canadian side insisted that they kept the itinerary the way it was, and a lot of Indian people caught on to, you know, kind of the tourist aspect of it over the diplomatic aspect of it, and you know, roasted him for it. And then he had a former terrorist accused of, well, terrorist might be a strong word, but apparently you know, an extremist that is a separatist for a state in India, and had attempted to murder a moderate politician you know, in the 80s, and he ended up on a guest list for Trudeau's party at the Canada House, which turned out to not necessarily be his fault, but he is the prime minister and he is the one on the trip. So yeah, it's just stuff that doesn't look good, and stuff that, you know, shows a lack of attention to detail and a lack of attention to, you know, what his actual job is. So you know, the accounts are that things kind of smoothed over near the end as he actually got into, you know, international talks and diplomatic talks with Modi, and apparently Modi is very fond of him, and they had a you know, very warm embrace and those types of things. So seems like it worked out okay. I mean, I don't think that that Canadian Indian ties are really holding the world together, so I don't think it's a huge deal, but it is for Canada. So hopefully Trudeau's next international trip, wherever it may be, goes a little bit smoother and is more world leaderly than touristy. And maybe that's where we'll cut it off for today. That quote again from a Barkha Dutt, Indian journalist writing for the Washington Post. Suddenly, all that charisma and cuteness seem constructed, manufactured, and above all, not serious. Again, Barkha Dutt in reference to Justin Trudeau and his trip through India and meetings with the president there. That quote again brought to us by Overkill Killer. Have a friend who is overdoing it when meeting new people. Try Overkill Killer. Will subdue your friend and bring them back down to earth so they can have normal conversations with people and normal interactions with international diplomats. That again is it for the Slackline. Thanks to Crooked Spies for providing their tunes as usual. Make sure you're following the podcast on Instagram at the.slack.line, on Twitter at slackline_radio, and on iTunes and YouTube at the Slackline Podcast. You have been listening to The Boss.
The boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
And we are out for today, and we will talk to everybody tomorrow. Hope everybody has a good day.
Searching for something to keep me right. Well, I'm a man on fire. Watch me burn till this heart don't desire. Well, I'm a man on fire. Yes, I'm a man.